Hello everyone, welcome back to Maverick Mods. Well, this week, first I'm going to put the whole snake thing to rest. Around the shop here, we're mostly free of drama. I mean, we make a lot of noise, but other than that, just not a whole lot of excitement happens around here. But once in a while, up the street a ways, they're clearing off this big field for some new, who knows what it is. Displaces a lot of wildlife. So over the last weeks, we've seen turtles and who knows what just passing through the parking lot. They're looking for a new home. So the other day, found a snake. Pretty big snake. Now, where I grew up, snakes are mostly bad. They tend to have rattles on them, and it hurts when they bite you. I don't know around here in the southeast, I don't know snakes as well. I know that the ones that hurt you and bite you don't have rattles all the time. So I'm kind of leery of snakes. But there's a snake, he's just hanging out in the shop next door, just made the weather table saw his new home. So little research, found out there's a rat snake. But still not taking any chances. So now I don't have any specific snake removal tools here in the shop, but I kind of figured, what the heck, he's probably not poisonous, might not bite me, might not get too mad at me. So I just grabbed my longest pry bar and just kind of picked him up and carried him out. Figured out, hey, as long as he's not too mad at me, as long as he's not going to bite me, and as long as he's not poisonous, live and let live. Nothing else. If it's a rat snake, maybe he'll eat some rats around here. Haven't seen any rats, maybe that's why. So just carried him out. Halfway down the parking lot there, he decided to climb up the pry bar just to check me out. Maybe he wanted to be friends, I don't know. But he decided not, kind of hung on the bar for a while. Almost got him to the grass before he decided he'd had enough of his, carnival ride on the pry bar. So he dropped off, got him in the grass. Life is good. No snakes were harmed in the making of this video. All right, with the whole snake thing out of the way, what's up for this week? Front suspension. I'm gonna refurbish, renew, and put the front suspension components and the steering components back on the car. So, grab your popcorn, let's get started. Before I get started putting the suspension back together on the Firebird, it's time for a little philosophizing. Not a whole lot, I promise, a little bit. There's another YouTuber out there that I love watching, the guy, that when he philosophizes, he plops himself into a rocking chair. He calls it his boomer chair. I'm not a boomer. So the best I can do is I'm sitting in my Gen X old beat up office chair, got my feet propped up, and I'm coming to you that way. So I'm philosophizing from my Gen X chair. So what are we talking about today? Just a brief recap of my philosophy towards why I'm doing what I'm doing on the Firebird. As most of you know, but some of you don't, when I picked up the Firebird, it was in moderately poor condition. It was a project car for a guy who had a heart attack, and obviously the car was unfinished. It was in a million pieces, and frankly, a lot of the pieces were not in the greatest shape. Like I said, I've seen worse, I've seen a lot better, and so the idea of getting the donor car, which was the 2000 Z28, the 4th gen platform, getting the LS, getting the T56, getting the torque arm rear suspension, and incorporating the suspension from the 4th gen is where we're at now on the car. Now, my philosophy on basically any vehicle is, I don't like garage queens. The idea of a car sitting 364 out of 365 days a year in a garage under a cover, it just rubs me the wrong way. It gnaws at me. Because you're one rainy day away from the car sitting the entire year in the garage under a cover, and the more that happens, the farther it gets pushed to the back of the garage and the more it kind of gets forgotten. So my philosophy is I want to build cars, I want to own cars that are fun to drive, and you want to take them out and enjoy them. There's a balance in there though. As I'm putting the Firebird together, you're going to see me put some parts on, like today we're going to be doing urethane bushings in the suspension. I'm not a huge fan of urethane bushings. I prefer the newer duraluminum something bushings that are, they're aluminum bushings with a Teflon insert. I like those a whole lot better. Urethane these days, you know, some of it's gotten caught up in the Chinese parts deal where, you know, 2 years. Probably an F-18. 2 years later, the bushing it just disintegrates to nothing. Hopefully I bought good bushings from a reputable company. Time will tell. But I couldn't use the bushings I preferred because nobody makes them for the 4th gen Camaro Firebird platform. So I had to use either factory rubber bushings or the urethane bushings. So you're going to see me do the urethane this time. And that goes to another philosophy of mine is if you're going to use the car, kind of try and stay away from race car parts and what I call exotic parts that you have to buy from Summit and Jegs and places like that. And you can't get them through Rock Auto or O'Reilly's Auto Parts. And the idea being that you cannot always guarantee that 10 years from now, when you need to replace that A, B, or G widget, that company that made that part is actually still around. Whereas if you're using factory replica or factory parts, or you, like I did, built the platform so that it can accept as many factory replacement parts as possible, then when you do need to repair the car, it's a whole lot easier to find the replacement parts. All right, am I done ranting? Yes. Okay, rant's over. Let's go see what it takes to put urethane bushings into the suspension parts. I'm working on getting the suspension cleaned up, and I've got one of the upper control arms here. I'm replacing the bushings, and you know, there's two ways, there's a bunch of different ways you can go with this. I'm doing polyurethane bushings. I know, but I looked for duraluminum, duraluminum, whatever those bushings are, which I really like, and they don't make anything that works with this because this is all kind of metric-y. So I went ahead and did the polyurethane. But with polyurethane, well, let me back up. With a standard rubber bushing, you'd knock out the entire bushing, sleeve and all. The polyurethane doesn't come with a sleeve, so what you have to do is you have to remove the rubber from inside the bushing in order for the polyurethane bushing to be pressed in. So I'll get that pressed in here shortly after I get everything cleaned up and painted. But the question is, how do you get the bushing part out without removing the sleeve? And there's a bunch of different ways to do it. One of the best ways I've found with these particular control arms, because everyone's a little bit different, is I get it over here on the press, get it all kind of lined up, get the arm supported, and I just take and use a socket that is small enough that I'm going to push out the center sleeve. And it kind of tears its way through and it breaks the rubber out, but it gets the sleeve off. And there you can kind of feel how it broke loose there. And it just pushes the sleeve out, and of course it breaks it out as it goes. So now, that's step one. You got the center part up. There's still a whole bunch of rubber here, so we got to get rid of that rubber. You can burn the rubber out, which is what I'm going to do. But what I have found is a lot of times it's kind of advantageous to try and get as much of the rubber kind of cut out as you can. It's just that much less smoke and rubber fumes and burning rubber that you got to deal with. So on these, there's a few of these little tabs on the side. I'm going to cut those off. And sometimes you can go through nice. I need a sharp blade. So with a sharp blade, you can kind of come in and just kind of start cutting some of the bigger rubber chunks out. You're not going to be able to get them all, but every bit that you can cut out is that much less you have to burn out. Well, now we get to go and get the propane torch out. And now we just take the propane torch. I would recommend doing this outdoors because it's going to get smoky and smelly. Probably not going to get it all in one go, just kind of stop. And you'll notice that when you kind of melt the rubber, every time it'll just come off a little bit easier. So it's still going to come off in chunks, but it's a little softer, so it's going to come off in bigger chunks. All right, I'm going to hit it one more time with the propane torch. All right, now let's move on to the next step. We'll get finished cleaning this out. So the final thing to do to get your little sleeve cleaned out is buy one of these little, now this one's too big, buy one of these little flap wheel drum sanders that goes on the end of a drill or a die grinder. The smaller one here, I think this was or is a 1-inch. This is just about the perfect size. And you just go in and use it to, it'll eventually clean out all the remaining rubber. Okay, so that's pretty much what it took. Get it all cleaned out. If anybody's got a better way to do this, I'm all ears, because this is just a pain in the butt to do. So I've got the upper control arms done. I still got the front bushing on the lower control arms to do. But maybe the next time I do this, if somebody's got a better idea, put it down in the comments. I'm always up for learning a new, better, and easier way to do things, and less messy way to do things. After getting all of the, what do you call them, the rubber, the bushings, those are the things, out of the suspension components, the upper and lower control arms, I got the rest of the suspension parts sandblasted, ran through the sandblast cabinet, and cleaned up, taping off what needs to be taped off, and next they're going to get painted. Of course, that's front suspension, this is rear. Brakes are over here, got a special color for the brakes. Not doing red because, you know, 50-foot extra stopping distance is not good enough for me, so I'm going to do a different color for the calipers. At any rate, I'll get all of these pieces set up in the paint booth and get those sprayed, and we'll be back. Let's walk into the makeshift paint booth here, and let's grab some suspension components. Now, they have been painted. Just grab a lower control arm here. Let's get it over here on the bench. Basically, I painted them it's a metallic gray, it's a gunmetal, I guess you could call it. And the paint that I used is right over here. This is from Axo Nobel. It's called U500. It's just a single stage urethane. It's really robust. Should hold up well for you know, what the suspension parts are going to see. Let me grab the rest of those and we'll start reassembling everything. See if we can get some of these on the car. Let's start off reassembly of the control arms by putting some bushings in. I do need to put some of the grease that comes with them on, which will help them from squeaking. Okay, so put a little on there. Coat the outer portion here. Okay, this part should be fairly easy. Famous last words, eh? Alright, so grab my control arm, see if I can keep from getting it dirty. Now, you don't have to use a press to do this. I'm using a press, well, because I have one. Stick our bushing in there. Maybe get it started just a little bit. There we go. Okay. It shouldn't take that much force. Yep. Okay. It really doesn't take that much force to get in there. But by doing this, I can make sure it goes in straight and I don't have any problems. There's one side. Do the same thing for the other bushing. We'll go ahead and get some grease on it. Good. Now we can take these back to the bench and finish up with the bushings here. Alright, now we're going to need to put the sleeve inside the bushing itself. It's a slip fit. Does need grease on it, so I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to take some of the extra grease that's squished out from the outer portion of the bushing, put it to good use. It's not quite enough though. This might take a little bit of pressure, but it should just kind of, yeah, there we go. You just kind of force it in. There we go. I'll get the, let's see, which one does this be? Passenger side upper control arm, urethane bushings in, get the ball joint in, and we'll be ready to put these in the car. Let's go ahead and grab the control arm and let's put it in, or put it on, what do you want to call it. I'm going to slide. Like I said, I don't have the same kind of give on the urethane as I had on the rubber bushings, but I think we can get it in here. I'm going to try and do this without scratching the paint. That may be a lost cause, but we can give it a try. Got lots of grease in there. Alright, hey, I've already got almost a line up here. Okay. What am I doing over here? A little bit more. There we go. Alright. A little tap tap. There we go. Let me throw some nuts on the back side here. Now, with urethane bushings, it doesn't matter whether you tighten them fully when the car is sitting at ride height, because they act differently than factory rubber bushings. I'm kind of old school. My thought, the way I've always done it, was tighten it when it's at ride height fully. I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to tighten them, but not fully tighten them until all the suspension is on and the car is sitting at ride height. So, upper control arm basically is in. Once I snug those bolts up, get the other side, let's work on the lowers. As far as the lower control arms, I'm going to start with the ball joint only because these are such a pain in the ass. I really hate doing them, but you know, you got to do them. And because they're a press in, and they're just the control arm shape is just makes things a pain in the butt. So I've got my tool set up, set my ball joint in. Oh, let's go the other way. It actually goes in that way. All right, so I was kind of hoping to be able to do this without scratching the control arms, but there's just not much of a way to do it. So we'll make sure we're centered. And I'll show you upside down once this thing's in, kind of how this works. There is a C-clamp you can use to as a press, but if you got a press, all right, so here we go. Let's give it a try. Okay, it's self-centering, and that's good, I think. Let's see if we can get a little close up in here and see what we're doing here. Yeah, you can see it going in. I will have to say it's a whole lot easier to do this off the vehicle than on. Because doing this on the vehicle is just a massive pain in the rear. Let's see how we're doing. All right, I like to stop, take a pick. You run a pick along the side here, you can get it in there. Sometimes you got to pull the, actually I'm going to have to on this one. Stand by. Once I've got the ball joint in, pretty close, you only have to do it on these pressing ones. I like to take a pick and just run it right along the joint where the lip of the control arm is and the ball joint shoulder. Just run it all along the edge, and that'll tell you whether or not you got it in. See that right there? I don't know. Almost feels like it's not quite there. Yeah, see, I ran my pick there, and it's actually cocked in there a little bit. So back to the press. Let's see if I can get it in a little bit better. Only real difference on the bushings on the lower is instead of a normal horizontal bushing, control arm bushing like we're used to, the rear part of the arm has a vertical bushing. So there's a cup that fits under here in there, and then another cup fits here, and then the sleeve goes inside. And the main reason for this, I'm not sure the reason for it, but all of the caster and camber adjustments for this suspension setup are all done off of the lower control arm. So the sleeves have got captured washers with serrations on it that kind of go in here. So everything kind of crushes together. Is this any better than that? Beats me, but this is the way it is. So pretty straightforward. Lower control arm install. Whoop. All right. Let's try that again. Lower control arm installation time. Let's see if we can make everything fit in here. So I've got my, what they call a vertical bushing. I'm sure there's a different name for it. And then the normal bushing on the front. This one slides in, basically it just kind of slides in the way it always did. I'm expecting it to be a little tight. Okay, that one's going. That one's going. Not bad so far. Wouldn't surprise me if I need a little persuasion. Let's see. Let's get the plastic dead blow hammer out. Shouldn't hurt the paint. Okay, I'm looking at my slot on the top here. Okay, I can get the bolt in the back. I'll go and do that now. Here's what we're looking at to get the bolt in. You notice it's one of these weird funky bolts that's got the little what would you call that? I don't know what you call that, but it fits in there, and that little tang fits in that slot. That one's in. All right, same drill on the front. Oh, let's get the right hammer. Little persuasion. Help things line up a little bit. See if we can get the bolt in. And it does. Same thing, we'll line up the little tang. That's in. Put the nut on the back side. Now, same thing, I'm going to tighten these up, but I'm not going to torque them, I'm not going to torque, tighten them. Let's try this again. I'm going to tighten these up snug, but not finish torque until after the car is on the ground and at ride height. While I'm here, and before I go ahead and put the steering knuckles on and the bearings, I've got easy access to mounting the coilovers. It's not going to make any difference whether I put them on now or later as far as being able to actually get the spindle hooked up. I did dial the shock down to basically the bottom of the collar here, just to make things easier. We did have it set for ride height before, but it's no big deal on coilovers just to reset your ride height, so no biggie. So let's go ahead and get this in. See if I can do this without scratching any paint. There we go. Probably a little paint in the bolt hole there. Get our washer, get our nut, and these can be torqued to final spec now. And get the bolts on the bottom here. Come on. It even takes just a little bit of effort. Wish I had 3 hands about right now. Or an assistant today would be nice. Okay, there's one nut and bolt. Get the opposite side here. And there we go. Alright, I can do a final torque on all of this. I'll put the shock on the other side. Then we can continue. Okay, coilovers are in, torqued. Obviously not ride height adjusted yet, but I can consider that complete installation. Next, spindle. Let's go ahead and, I'm not putting the bearing in yet. I'm going to do that after the spindle's on. So it should be for relatively straightforward. Drop it in. It should just be able to pull the top down, get it in the slot, get it lined up, and in it goes. One of the things I like to try and do, just grab something. I'm using my Allen wrench slash ball joint alignment tool. If you can, just kind of align the hole for the cotter pin just to make things easier to access. Is that a 17? That is a 17. Okay. Now let's use the right size wrench. Now we'll give this thing a bit of a crank. Since I haven't put the steering stops in yet, do a little protecting of the finish on the parts and pieces here. Now. Alright, now when it feels tight, I'm basically just going to go enough of a turn farther to align the cotter key. Almost there. We're there. Now, are you supposed to bend both ends, clip both ends, cut them, leave them? Beats me. I've heard both arguments. I don't think anybody is right or wrong. I just don't want a sharp end coming out to stick me. And in the end, I think as long as that cotter pin doesn't come out, life is good. So top one's done. Let's do the bottom one. Snip the end so it's not going to snag somebody and cause a nice little gash in their hand. Alright, so my steering knuckles in. Next, I'm going to get the wheel bearing assembly in. Okay, now obviously the spindles are handed because you know, it's the steering arm's got to go the right way. The wheel bearings are not. All you have to do is make sure that you're, if it's so equipped, your connector for your wheel speed sensor is pointing the right direction. In this case, they're pointing aft. There we go. and get some bolts in this, get them torqued down. All right, let's put some bolts in the wheel hub here. A little bit of Loctite on the bolts. Probably not a bad idea. Oh. Okay, I'm just going to use the impact to run the bolts down. All right, and let's give them a final torque. These are 10mm bolts. So we're back to our magical 52 foot-pounds. Probably doesn't matter, but I'm going to do kind of a cross pattern here. Alright, wheel hubs are installed. Let's go find some more parts to put on. Alright, fellas and fellettes. I can't think of a single reason why I can't put the front sway bar on. So let's go ahead and do that. Mine up here. Put some bolts in. How are we doing on alignment here? Whoop. Well, that didn't work. Alright, let's run these in a few periods. Alright, that'll stay in. Let's see if we can get this side in. You know, if these things came in from the top, they wouldn't fall out of the bottom like that. There we go. Okay. Alright, now, before I tighten those up, I need to get my links in, make sure my bar is centered. Alright, let's put the links in, and alright, how are these? Hang on. Alright, so the instructions say this setup is a little bit different. Actually, it's got a through bolt, but it doesn't have a nut on the back side. This is called a barrel nut. It says the barrel nut must be installed through the eye of the sway bar itself. So we'll go ahead and do that. So, of course, that means I got to take the whole thing apart, except for that. Down to here. There's a little barrel nut there. I mean, a little sleeve. So this will go up through the control arm, and the links will sit there. Now let's rotate that up out of the way. And then I've got another sleeve and alright, let's try this again. There's 40 gazillion parts here. I only have 2 hands. So let's keep going up here. Washer. That. There. Now, we'll come down top through here. Get that started. Let me get the other side on. Same way. Alright, order of installation. Our long bolts with our bottom bushing goes up through the control arm. Bushing and a washer. Sleeve that I dropped on the ground. Gotta have that. Washer. Bushing through the control arm here, and then we've got our barrel nut and our bushing up here. On sway bar end links, contrary to popular belief, you don't have to crank them down like a gorilla until all the bushings are just squished out and etc. You just need to snug them until you get compression on the bushings themselves. So we're good and solid there. Sway bar is installed. Time for steering rack install. Got all painted up, looking nice and snazzy, hopefully. New bushings. Let's see if we can figure out how to get this in here. Get it around everything. So that one goes there. That one goes slides in there. Let's get some bolts in it. Come on in, get out of the rain.
What's that?
That's it. Steering rack is in. Next up, I'm going to change the tie rod ends. I left those on when I painted the rack because I wanted to paint this rod because there's a little rust on it. But before I hook everything completely up, let's go ahead and change out these tie rods. Well, front suspension is finished. Went ahead and put the new tie rod ends on both sides. So I've got reconditioned upper control arms, new ball joint, new bushings, reconditioned lower control arms, new ball joint, new bushings. Coilovers are in. Front wheel hubs and bearings are on. Front sway bar is on with new links. Steering gear is installed, freshly painted. I think it looks pretty good. Next thing I got to work on the front anyway, is brakes. And that'll come with getting the rear suspension and rear end put in. All right, fellas, that's going to do it for this week. Front suspension's installed, done, waiting for final torque when we get it back down to ride height. Next week, we'll continue with the suspension on the rear, get that all reinstalled. Got a little treat for you on the rear end. Going to leave it at that. Certainly appreciate everybody watching. Thank you guys for tuning in every week and kind of following along with what I'm doing to the Firebird here and my other projects. Please like, share, subscribe, notify, etc., etc. It does really help me out. Everybody, see you next week. Have a great day.